Hi guys, welcome to this video on Act 1 Scene 5 for Macbeth. And in this scene we're going to see Lady Macbeth receive news from Macbeth around the witch's prophecies and news that Duncan is going to be staying at their castle. These two things combined lead Lady Macbeth to begin plotting Duncan's murder, and then when we see Macbeth at the end of the scene, her kind of manipulation of Macbeth towards the idea of murdering Duncan. To say this is a really key scene because this is the scene when we're first introduced to the character of Lady Macbeth, and we learn a lot about her personality, a lot about her desire for power, her ruthlessness that really comes through in this scene. And again, when thinking about characters, we need to think about how they change. So in this scene, Lady Macbeth is going to be a powerful character, a strong character, a character who knows what she wants and will do anything to get it. I want you to think, when we get to the end of the play, how has her character changed? That's a really important point. So before we start looking through some of the annotation, let's just have a little listen to Act 1 Scene 5.
Hail, King that shall be. Hail, King that shall be. They met me in the day of success, and I've learned by the perfectest report they have more in them than mortal knowledge. When I burned in desire to question them further, they made themselves air into which they vanished. Whilst I stood wrapped in the wonder of it, came missives from the king, who all hailed me Thane of Cawdor, by which title before these weird sisters saluted me, and referred me to the coming on of time with hail, King that shall be. This have I thought good to deliver thee, my dearest partner of greatness, that thou mightst not lose the dews of rejoicing by being ignorant of what greatness is promised thee. Lay it to thy heart and farewell. Glamis thou art, and Cawdor, and shalt be what thou art promised. Yet do I fear thy nature. It is too full of the milk of human kindness to catch the nearest way. Thou wouldst be great, art not without ambition, but without the illness should attend it. What thou wouldst highly, that wouldst thou holily. Wouldst not play false, and yet wouldst strongly win. Thou'dst have great Glamis, that which cries, thus thou must do if thou have it, and that which rather thou dost fear to do, than wishest should be undone. Hie thee hither, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear, and chastise with the valour of my tongue all that impedes thee from the golden round, which fate and metaphysical aid doth seem to have thee crowned withal. What is your tidings?
The king comes here tonight.
Thou'rt mad to say it. Is not thy master with him, who whatso would have informed for preparation?
So please you, it is true. Our thane is coming. One of my fellows had the speed of him, who almost dead for breath had scarcely more than would make up his message.
Go give him tending, he brings great news. The raven himself is hoarse, that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan under my battlements. Come, you spirits, that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here, and fill me from the crown to the toe, top full of direst cruelty. Make thick my blood. Stop up the access and passage to remorse, that no compunctious visitings of nature shake my fell purpose, nor keep peace between the effect and it. Come to my woman's breasts and take my milk for gall. You murdering ministers. Wherever in your sightless substances you wait on nature's mischief. Come, thick night, and pour thee in the dunnest smoke of hell, that my keen knife see not the wound it makes, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark, to cry, hold, hold. Great clams, worthy Cawdor, greater than both by the all-hail hereafter. Thy letters have transported me beyond this ignorant present, and I feel now the future in the instant.
My dearest love, Duncan comes here tonight.
And when goes hence?
Tomorrow, as he purposes.
Oh, never shall sun that morrow see. Your face, my Thane, is as a book where men may read strange matters. To beguile the time, look like the time. Bear welcome in your hand, your eye, your tongue. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. He that's coming must be provided for, and you shall put this night's great business into my dispatch, which shall to all our nights and days to come give solely sovereign sway and masterdom.
We will speak further.
Only look up clear. To alter favour ever is to fear. Leave all the rest to me.
Okay, right, let's start looking at some of the annotation. So, first things first, this scene further develops the theme of the supernatural. It's a key thing to bear in mind. Lady Macbeth, she evokes supernatural forces, and think about what that's connected to in this play. You know, witchcraft. So you could assume that Lady Macbeth is a little bit invoking the same sort of powers as the witches have. But it also deals with betrayal, primarily the betrayal of Duncan. This scene also explores gender, and gender's a really interesting thing in this play. In particular, gender reversals. So you could argue throughout this play that Lady Macbeth behaves in a rather masculine way, whereas while Macbeth is with Lady Macbeth, he behaves in quite a feminine way. I'm thinking particularly after they've killed Duncan, and we'll see that when we get there. But just bear in mind as we're going through this annotation how this scene is dealing with gender. So structurally, the letter is written as prose. This is just Macbeth writing something down. And then we straight away have a further development of the supernatural. So Macbeth says to her in the letter, they have more in them than mortal knowledge, and that he burned in desire to question them further. So this indicates that Macbeth wants the knowledge of the witches, that he is more on board with doing as they say, and kind of using them for guidance. Now this could show one of two things. This could link to the corruption of Macbeth. Have the witches corrupted him through their spells and their incantations? Is he under their power? Or are the witches trying to manipulate Macbeth? You know, have they told him these things to put him in a position where he's going to do something like killing the king? Okay. Ooh. So then we see some details of their relationship. Macbeth says, "My dearest partner of greatness." So the use of the word partner talks about equality in their marriage, which is not necessarily normal at this time. You know, in Jacobean society, certainly people in more wealthy situations would have marriages based on inequality. So we know that Macbeth is the person that inherited the title from his father, so maybe Lady Macbeth is less powerful than him, but they're shown as equals, which indicates, you know, very much at this point in the play, he loves his wife. Again, think about how that changes when we get to the end of the play. We then have the first of two soliloquies from Lady Macbeth. And she uses some really nice nature. She says here, yet I do fear thy nature, it is too full of the milk of human kindness. This shows that she is worried that he is soft. She worries that Macbeth lacks the fortitude to go ahead with this kind of killing, which is strange when you think that Macbeth has done so much killing already. And I think that shows they know that this killing is going to be wrong. But within this quotation, let's just consider the symbolism behind milk in this metaphor. Milk is linked with innocence, purity, babies and weakness, but at the same time, it is linked with nutrition and being good for you. So in this way, she worries that Macbeth is weak, innocent, but also full of goodness and full of things that will be nutrition for the people around him. You know, he's a nice guy. She recognises that Macbeth lacks evil. She talks here, but without the illness should attend it. And the illness is the evil within them. You know, he lacks that evil within him. At the same time, this foreshadows mental illness, and the mental illness that both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth will express towards the end of the play. We then get some really nice juxtaposing imagery, equivocation, if you will. She says, what thou wouldst highly, that wouldst thou holily. So, and again, wouldst not play false, and yet wouldst wrongly win. This is the idea that Macbeth won't cheat, but would win if it was in the wrong way. You know, the idea that Macbeth would happily take Cawdor, even though it had been prophesied by witches, and you know that could be seen as wrong. It also shows an element of indecisiveness to Macbeth, that he finds it difficult to commit to one side or the other. Now, this phrase here, a key phrase to remember, that I may pour my spirits in thine ear. She's talking about manipulating Macbeth, that she's going to say things to him that change his opinion, that make him act in a certain way. And this word spirits, again, this is like a homophone. So it refers to the supernatural, you know, like ghosts and spirits and demons and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it refers to alcohol. So maybe she's saying that she's going to get him drunk on her words, and then he'll be easier to manipulate and do what she wants to do. This idea that she will chastise with the valour of her tongue, that she will bully him into doing what she wants him to do. You know, chastise means to kind of punish. So that she's going to punish him, mock him, and we see this happen across the next couple of scenes, that she's going to bully him into doing what she wants him to do. And again, this is not the typical Jacobean family setup. So in thinking about the role of women with Lady Macbeth, you could easily approach this play from a feminist perspective and say, well, actually, Lady Macbeth is an example of a strong female character, that she is able to persuade her husband, who would typically be the person in charge, to act in a way that he didn't necessarily want to. And then finally, we have this reference to fate, a metaphysical aid. So fate being the motif around chance, predestination, all that stuff we've talked about already. A metaphysical, this is something supernatural, meaning the witches. And then we have another example of fate, you know, coincidence. And once we got to the end of this, I would really like to put together all of these coincidences. But here we have the coincidence that Duncan happens to be coming to the castle on the night when Macbeth has found out that he could become the king. So now, with this second soliloquy, we need to think about how is Lady Macbeth shown to be unlike a typical Jacobean woman, and think a little bit about how and why does she reject her gender. So, we start with the raven himself is hoarse. So we've seen references to birds already, and we'll see references to birds again. A raven, the symbolism behind a raven is within the Bible. It references Satan and the devil, but at the same time, to a Jacobean audience, it would represent death. You know, ravens are carrion birds that pick at corpses. Yeah, they do represent death. There's also an idea that a raven's like call is supposed to sound like corpse. And if you listen, you can kind of work that out. But definitely it is foreshadowing of death and evil. So the raven himself is horse that croaks the fatal entrance of Duncan, and fatal entrance, that again foreshadows Duncan's death. We see another example of equality where she says, under my battlements, and certainly in the scene that we listen to, there is an emphasis on my. The idea that Lady Macbeth feels that she is the person in charge of the castle. Now, the supernatural is developed here. Come, you spirits. She invokes the supernatural, which is a very unchristian thing to do, and would definitely talk to a Jacobean audience about Lady Macbeth and her goodness and her purity, namely being that, you know, she's not a very good character. And then this quotation, this is a really important one to bear in mind if a question comes up on Lady Macbeth's character. Unsex me here. She rejects her gender. And when we get to the end of this scene, we'll think a little bit more about why she does this, but definitely here she is rejecting her gender. She wants to be full of evil. She wants all of the goodness inside her to be taken away, stop up the access and passage to remorse. She doesn't want to feel. I mean, I think that this says something about Lady Macbeth's character before this moment. And certainly when she looks on the sleeping Duncan, we see a slightly softer side to her. If she's asking to have the access and passage to remorse stopped up, then that maybe indicates that before this, she was quite a compassionate and remorseful character. It's just in this circumstance, greed and unchecked ambition are starting to take over her. So this idea that she doesn't want to feel, it might be that, you know, she wants to be evil, or it might be that she wants to suppress the good feelings that she's had in her life. Now here is a further example of her rejecting her gender. Take my milk for gall, another reference to milk. And in this instance, milk definitely represents nutrition. And feeding a baby is one of the most feminine things that you could do. It's a bond between you and a child in which you are literally growing that child with your own milk. So she wants to replace one of the most feminine things with gall, like a grey bile kind of a nothingy kind of substance. Not very nice. So again, here she is rejecting her gender. She's turning against womanhood. She wants to become more masculine. She says, come thick night and pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell. So this starts with an imperative, come thick night. Oh, I've cut off my annotations here. And pall thee in the dunnest smoke of hell. Again, this links with the idea that Macbeth said, you know, when he said that the dark night should mask the stars. She wants to cover up the sky because she knows what she's doing is wrong, and she doesn't want God to see, because again this goes against the great chain of being, and if God were to see, he will punish both her and Macbeth. That my keen knife see not the wound it makes. She talks like she wants to be the person doing the murder, even though she isn't the person that does the murder. And this, nor heaven peep through the blanket of the dark, this is the same idea as before. She doesn't want God to be able to see what they're doing, because by killing Duncan, they are working directly against God and will be punished. So think a little bit about, why does Lady Macbeth wish for these things? Why does Lady Macbeth wish to not be so feminine? Well, I think from a feminist perspective, we could say that in the Jacobean era, women lacked agency, so she couldn't do things independently. So if she becomes more masculine, she can. Maybe it's that she lacks the physical strength to do the murder, that she is a weak woman, in inverted commas, and she feels unable physically to stab a person to death. It also may be to do with the fact that Macbeth is a warrior, and Lady Macbeth is not a warrior. So she wants to channel some of that energy and some of that violence that she sees in her husband in her own life. But definitely, if talking about Lady Macbeth and gender and her rejection of gender, I think you've got to think about all three things here. And certainly, if in the exam you were to talk about each one of those things, you would get lots and lots of marks. We then see a recurrence of this repeating word, hereafter. We talked about this before. From now on, or life after death, showing, foreshadowing the things that are going to happen to Macbeth and Lady Macbeth. She says now, this ignorant present, and I feel now the future in an instant. This is a little reference to time. She feels that she can see what's going to happen. She feels like she's moved past the present. And when she talks about the present, she's talking about the murder of Duncan. These are structurally now, these are broken lines of iambic pentameter, showing their closeness. They're kind of finishing each other's words. And then tomorrow, this is another recurring word, and obviously it is a word that refers to time. Tomorrow is this kind of vague time period that never really arrives. We'll get onto that when it becomes more relevant, but Shakespeare is embedding these recurring words just within each scene. I think it's worth noting. Now we have some imagery around the death of Duncan. Oh, never shall sun that morrow see. Talking about Duncan. So this is his death, but also it's like the loss of light. The sun won't rise tomorrow for Duncan, but as we will see, the sun won't rise the day after Duncan's death for the whole of Scotland, and that in itself has a lot of symbolism within it. But here we're talking about the loss of goodness, and the death of Duncan being the death of something positive, the sun. Now, Lady Macbeth looks to Macbeth and says his face is a book where men may read strange matters. This shows that Macbeth is not good at lying, and that Macbeth kind of shows on his face what he's thinking and what he's feeling. And this is a direct opposite to what Duncan says in the previous scene, where he says it's difficult to see what men feel in their faces. Well, here's Lady Macbeth looking at Macbeth, seeing exactly what he feels in his face. So this could be kind of an underhanded reference to Duncan not being the best king. And then finally, here is a contextual reference. Look like the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it. Meaning, look innocent, but be deadly. Look innocent like a flower, but be deadly like a snake. And this refers to his false face. And we'll see this in the next scene, I think. The scene after, maybe. Where Macbeth says, false face must hide what the false heart doth know. This play deals with hidden identities and hidden agendas. And Lady Macbeth is telling Macbeth here that he's got to hide his true feelings and hide what they're going to do and appear to be loyal and good. But this reference, the innocent flower, but be the serpent under it, this talks directly to King James, who commissioned a special coin after the gunpowder plot was discovered. On this coin, there was a snake hiding under a flower. I should have the coin up here. Note the image of a snake hiding under the flower to represent a treasonous person. Guy Fawkes and the gunpowder plotters, they were the snakes underneath the flower, hiding in society. So yeah, just a nice little contextual reference there. And she says, put this night's great business into my dispatch. So she's saying that she will take control of the situation. Again, this is not typical of a Jacobean woman. It's not typical of a Jacobean family setup. And indeed, she uses a heroic couplet here that she's trying to end the scene. She's saying, I've said all that there is to say. It's ended. Macbeth then interrupts with, we will speak further, and Lady Macbeth interrupts again, only look up clear, to alter favour ever is to fear. So this is another heroic couplet. She does it twice. to end the scene. And this shows Lady Macbeth's control and Lady Macbeth's power, and that, you know, Lady Macbeth can get away with things with Macbeth. Okay, so just finally, I'd like to just make some notes about how is Lady Macbeth seen as masculine. Make some notes around the ways that she rejects her gender and some of the things that she wishes for. Okay? Well, it's lovely talking to you guys, and I'll speak to you again. Bye-bye.